You are standing inside a cave in Brazil, deep enough that sunlight is a memory. The air is cool and thick with the smell of guano and stone. Above your head, a colony of bats hangs, hundreds, maybe thousands, clustered on the rock. Then you notice the webs, silk everywhere, catching things. In early 2026, biologists walking into caves near the state of Minas Gerais found something that stopped them cold. Not one bat caught in a spiderweb. Dozens, some still fresh. This was not supposed to happen. Spiders hunt insects. Bats hunt insects. They share the dark. But bats do not become prey. Bats are predators themselves. I have spent 18 years studying cave ecosystems in 3 countries, and I have never documented this before. My mentor, an arachnologist in Sao Paulo, called me that week. She was confused. Here is what you need to understand right now. These caves were not failing overnight. Something had shifted, and the spiders had shifted with it. This video is going to walk you through exactly what triggered that shift, step by step. You will learn how a spider rewires its own behavior in weeks, not generations. You will see the moment a cave's food web inverts, and why that matters to every ecosystem on land. But stay with me until the end, because there is something about what happened next that even the researchers involved do not fully agree on. It changed the way I think about how fast a species can adapt when it gets hungry enough. What we found in those caves raises a question that still keeps me awake. The webs were there. The bats were dying. But why did the spiders suddenly start building them the way they did? The answer starts with what vanished from those caves first. And that is where this story truly begins. So we know the spiders caught bats in 2026. But the question I asked myself was simple. Why then? Inside Brazilian caves, the food chain had held steady for thousands of years. Insects were abundant. Spiders hunted insects. Bats hunted insects. The system balanced. Then, between 2024 and 2026, something fractured. I spent months in these caves with my colleague Mateus, counting what we could find. The cave ceilings we'd once seen thick with flies and moths were nearly bare. Solid, like walking into a room someone had emptied. Here is what changed. The insect populations did not decline gradually. They collapsed. Within 18 months, we documented a 90% drop. I have surveyed these cave systems for 18 years. I had never seen this. The trigger was not a single event, but a sequence of pressures converging. Drought in the surface world above reduced the organic matter falling into the caves. That material feeds the cave's microbial base, which feeds the smallest invertebrates. No base layer, no insects climbing up from it. At the same time, water table fluctuations altered humidity in the deeper passages. Spiders are sensitive to moisture. So are the insects they depend on. The caves became hostile to the food the spiders had always taken for granted. I watched it happen in real time. Spiders growing thinner, moving less, entering what looked like a metabolic shutdown. For a predator, starvation is not a slow decline. It is a switch that flips. When you have no energy to hunt your usual prey, the question becomes urgent and simple. What else can you kill? What else is in this cave with you that might sustain you long enough to survive? The bats were there. They had always been there. But the bats had never looked like food before, because the spiders had never needed to look at them that way. Now, here is where the story gets stranger. The spiders did not simply attack bats at random and hope. They adapted their methods. Their webs changed, their venom changed. And that transformation happened far faster than any of us thought a spider's behavior could shift. Which brings me to what my colleagues and I still debate. So the insects vanished, and the spiders faced a choice: starve or hunt something new. You are in a cave passage in 2026, watching a web shimmer in your headlamp beam. That web looks almost identical to webs from 2024, before the collapse began. But it is not. Something fundamental has shifted in how it was built. I noticed it first when Matthias and I measured the silk strands under magnification. The silk was thicker, denser. The spacing between radial threads had tightened by almost 40%. A tighter web catches smaller prey. But these webs were catching bats. Here is the mechanism. A bat's wing membrane is papery, fragile, easy to shred. A loose web lets the wing tear through and the bat escapes. A tight web tangles the membrane, traps the whole body in silk. The spiders had re-engineered their own architecture in months, not years. Not all spiders adapted equally. Some colonies failed, others thrived. The ones that survived were the ones that pulled their threads closer together. Now, the venom. This is where it gets interesting. Spider venom evolved over millions of years to paralyze insects the size of ants. A bat is 10,000 times heavier than an insect. The venom needed to work faster, penetrate deeper, move through bat muscle tissue. I have examined venom glands from spiders collected in late 2026. The toxin composition had shifted, protein structures I had never documented before. I cannot tell you with certainty how this shift happened so rapidly. And I have to be honest with you about this one. Venom does not change in a few months. It should not. Yet the evidence in my own collections says it did. The spiders that injected older venom could not kill a bat before it escaped. The spiders that produced new venom could. Selection pressure does not usually work this fast, and I do not have a clean answer. But the dead bats in the webs tell their own story. Now the question becomes, could the bats sense the danger and leave the caves entirely? Or had the spiders already begun reshaping the whole ecosystem's future? Everything that happens next hangs on what the bats do in response. Now, with the spider webs tightened and the venom remade, you are standing at the mouth of a cave where everything has inverted. The bats are still there, but the spiders are hunting them now. And here is where it gets interesting, the part my colleagues still argue about. Some of us believed the bats would flee the caves entirely by autumn 2026. Leave. Find new roosts. Abandon a home they had used for centuries. But they did not leave. Most of them stayed. I watched this myself in late 2026, standing in a gallery deep underground. The bats returned night after night, despite the predation pressure. That is the twist I promised you at the start. The question became not whether bats would adapt, but what adaptation even looks like at this speed. In 2 years, the insect base had collapsed 90%. The spiders had rewired their webs and their venom. The bats had not moved. This is the food chain reversal I came to document. And I have to be honest with you about what it means. I still do not know if those bats will survive the next 2 winters. Nobody does. The data is too fresh. But here is what I do know. You have just watched an ecosystem reshape itself in real time. The field spot, the keystone effect, the hunger, the weaponized web, the new hierarchy. Each one built on the last. And this is not a cave in Brazil anymore. This is a mirror. Every ecosystem you live in is one drought, one food collapse, one predator shift away from the same inversion. The only difference is speed. Look at your own valley, your own forest, your own watershed. Watch for the animal that should not be there, hunting what it never hunted before. That is the signal I missed for 18 years before 2026. Now I do not miss it. I want to know, what have you noticed changing in the wild places near you? What predator has moved? What prey has vanished? What hierarchy has tilted? I read every single comment you leave, and I mean that. This work only moves forward when we all keep watching.